Lucky Finn clap.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Swords, Boards and Beards.
Hooray!
I'm back!
He's back, he's well, he's
I'm
shiny,
back.
he's polished his head just for me.
I did. It's like a bowling ball, you can see your face in it. No, I had COVID, so I was feeling rough.
Bad COVID.
Yeah, well, I think the majority of people who have now currently got COVID, because it's doing the rounds again, are feeling like I felt. So it was hot, cold, shivering, sweaty, snotty, coffee, all the greats, all the big hits, all the ones you like to see.
Or not.
Yeah.
So you're back.
But back.
And he's well, so we are up a beard.
We are.
Down a guest.
Down a guest.
Up a beard. But allegedly, we're also, there's some news.
There is.
What's the news?
So, you may...
allegedly, sorry.
This
is where I fill in the gap with, let's pick a voice, my sister's grandma impression. There you go.
Okay. So, allegedly, Adam's sister's grandma, our third member of the Beard Troupe, has got a new role, financially, a new job, and is unable to fit this in around his current working schedule.
Alas, Jace, we will have to have you on a guest when you can. Jace was trying to figure out if he could fit it in with work as well, and alas, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, so we're down a beard.
That's it.
But we'll have him back to point at him from across the room.
Well, we'll set the microphone up in the garden and he can talk at his normal volume and still pick him up.
Jace, you'll never listen to this, but on the technical level, the settings now are squiffy because I'm so used to the waveforms being louder on this software.
We don't have to shout at each other anymore.
So allegedly we're down a beard, but we are not down
a podcast. Yeah.
We're going to keep going. It's what Jace would have wanted.
Absolutely. Talking of podcasts, so this episode is all about villainy.
Pitch of the week. Pitch the episode. Why should people stick around?
Well, we're going to be analysing our favourite villains from pop culture. And then hopefully the idea behind it, and I don't know if we'll get this far, but the idea behind it is that we would take an aspect from potentially each one of our top 5, and at the end of it use those facets of character to create a TTRPG villain for you to use in your BBEG or in your games of Dungeons and Dragons, etc, etc, etc. It could be a useful tool for those DMs who are planning to do something like that. If not, it's just a lovely conversation about what makes a good villain.
What makes a good bad guy? Yeah, this was another request by a listener that said, tell us what makes a good villain for you. And then we asked, anyone who saw it on socials might have seen my request mid-coffee break in the working day, that said, please tell us your top 5 villains, or why you like villains, or what makes you a good villain. And a bunch of you got back to us.
Yeah, really pleased with that. Thank you
very much. So not only have we got the request and the episode is because someone asked for it, but you guys got involved. So, and then the very, very end, as well as what Adam said, how you can not only build from what we've created or what we've seen, but ways we have built villains in games we've played.
Or embellished existing ones, etc, etc.
Exactly. In fact, I've looked at how I chose to make Xanathar.
Yeah.
The stupid beholder that he is.
His pet goldfish.
His pet fucking goldfish. We only had a fish heist, but that's another story. my troupe wanted to have like a university heist.
Like stealing the mascot of the opposing school's football team.
Yeah, that was exactly the idea. And half the team went yes, and half the team went, you what? And they nearly went with it until they RP'd themselves a conversation and RP'd themselves out of it. And I thought, if you're going to do that, that's fine. Just be aware he loves his fish.
And you might need to give me your character sheets when he obliterates with eye lasers.
So we'll get to Xanathar and other characters later, but before we delve into that, part 1. Bad Guys Part 1.
Yeah, so we had a chat earlier this week or last week about setting this episode up, and we ended up just chatting for quite a long time about what makes a villain, full stop. Because a lot of like your favourite and our favourite movies and video games and books and genres of tabletop and things like that, it's not clear cut. It's no longer like this is the bad guy, this is the good guy and stuff, ever since sort of the Disney days. But even in the Disney days, you could kind of see certain characters who are acting under their own motives, and because of that they became villains, but they're not necessarily your classic pantomime style, very easy to identify. So
no, and I had a struggle when we were sat planning this episode and we were talking through it and we finished the organising and we finished all this and we went, right, think of our bad guys, and I sat there, you rattled some of yours off, and I sat there like a goldfish going, this is great audio by the way, this is me looking like a goldfish, and I really struggled to come up with, not because they're not bad, and then I struggled in my brain this week with, is there a difference between a villain and a bad guy? Because in my psyche, villains are worse, bad guys are just... that guy in every... Like, he was in Die Hard as the Oriental guy, and he was in Big Trouble in Little China. He's always the sidekick, and he's the...
Yeah, no, I...
Do you know who I mean?
I can picture the fella. I couldn't tell you his name.
But I never feel threatened by him.
Well, there's that Latin American actor who, if you look at his IMDb page, has played a character called Hector in like every action movie he's ever been in, and you'd recognise him immediately if you saw him. But he's always like a gangland, like cartel member or whatever.
Let's set a challenge. Okay, so Kevin, who always does this every week, says he fixes our mistakes. Well, he doesn't fix us, he's just shouting.
Points them out.
Every time he listens to the podcast, apparently he shouts out the answers to things we should know and we don't.
I'm
Kevin,
sure he's...
I know you're going to know the dude from Die Hard, and I'm sure you'll know the Hector dude as well. So your challenge this week, Kevin should be writing, is to start writing, but also to tell us where we've got that wrong. Or who they are.
But yeah, I was talking to my wife about it when I got home from us talking about it in your garden and sort of setting this up. I went home all sort of dizzy and excited about this episode recording, and said to my wife, what's your top 5 villains? And immediately, like, her brain jumped to like her favourite movies, so like Jurassic Park, and we were like, well, you can't consider the dinosaurs villains. They're just doing what dinosaurs would do. They're
hungry.
They haven't got an agenda. And ultimately, if you're looking at something like Jurassic Park, the villain is InGen, the company, who takes a very backward step, and you never actually see them, sort of thing. Because I said my counterpoint to dinosaurs. What about Dennis Nedry? And it's like, well, no, Nedry's just doing corporate espionage. He's not a villain.
He's a baddie.
He's an opportunist.
But is the villain the architect of it, and then the baddies? This is silly.
This is we get into the ether with it, don't we? But it's kind of like, is the villain of Jurassic Park too busy to figure out if they should? Is the villain sort of?
I stop to think if they should. No, what is the quote?
You know the quote.
I do know the quote.
Kevin knows the quote.
Kevin knows everything.
But and another example, like thinking about your favourite movie, like Jaws. The shark is not the bad guy. The shark is just doing what a shark would do.
Is the mayor the bad guy?
Yeah, definitely.
He opened the beaches.
Yeah, knowing the risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll all agree. And his taste in clothing was glorious.
Oh God, I want a suit with anchors all over it. I think I could pull it off. His
children were on that beach too, because we should all feel sad for him.
But they didn't go in the sea.
No, and what's the thing about democracy? There's some great. In the UK recently, we've had our elections, and someone quoted, "Please remember that the mayor in Jaws 2 was the same mayor as Jaws. Voting matters because they voted him back in."
They got him back in for a second term. Oh my God!
He's a villain.
I hadn't even thought of that.
No, but it was been long enough that it'd be like, blimey.
Yeah.
You're the mayor of Shark City, whatever they call it. So, villains and bad guys. What makes a good villain and what makes a good bad guy? I'm going to start this with asking you. Continue this by asking you for some of your bad
top
guys
5
and why you think they're good bad guys. What makes them?
Please don't put these in like order of best to worst or anything. It's
I'll
literally
put my notepad down.
Oh, good, please. But it's just who pops into my head now. So top 5 villains for me. I tried to keep away from the sort of really obvious ones because other people have brought them up in comments and things, which is fantastic, and we'll talk about them either way. But one immediately that springs to mind as a villain that I really liked because they were just so cruel and horrible was Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
As far as Game of Thrones went, I started at the beginning, went all the way to the end of it.
Did you finish it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, right? Joffrey was your big baddie for kind of the first 3 or 4 seasons until he ends up choking to death.
That's what happens when you grow up in Gotham.
Yeah,
he was also in Gotham.
He was, wasn't he? Batman gave him his night vision specs in the Batman Begins. Yeah, I know.
They'll never believe me.
here you go, have this like multi-million-pound bit of equipment.
I can just give you.
But yeah, he was your villain for the first few seasons, and then when he died, they upped the ante and they brought in Ramsay Bolton, and I loved him. I thought, just because he's so arsish, he's such a dickhead, and it was brilliant. He was that character you really love to hate, and his motivations for doing the things that he was doing was what I would think is like classic villainy.
Yeah.
Just doing it because I can.
Yeah. And
fear is a weapon, and I will use this to get what I want. And it was like, didn't he stab his dad at one point and stuff? Spoilers for Game of Thrones if you never watched
this episode is going to be full of spoilers if you haven't watched any of the films we reference.
Yeah, we can timestamp it on YouTube.
I will put a list at the bottom of all the things we referenced in this episode on YouTube and somewhere else. Alright.
Yeah.
And so you can go look, but yeah, I mean, these things have been out for a while, so...
Yeah, sure. But yeah, doesn't he stab his dad at some point just to try and take over the house and things? Like, he's a bit of a git. Yeah, really. And then, like, what he done to Sansa and what he done to Theon Greyjoy and stuff. Yeah, proper nasty, evil, bastard, villainy stuff. But he's one of my list.
Not a bastard, but a bastard.
Yeah. Okay. It's got a nicer ring to it.
It has. Northern's got that one right.
Yeah. The second one I'd like to have a little dive into is Andrew Ryan from BioShock. Yeah, I like Andrew Ryan, and the quote, I say I like Andrew Ryan, he's horrible, but like, what I liked about Andrew Ryan was that it was a case of the man had a very clear vision about what he wanted. Everything was going really well in the BioShock universe, and then everything came apart when people got hooked on plasmoids and started splicing themselves silly and going mental and things, and living under the sea for X amount of years is going to have a massive impact on you either way. So
yes,
by the time he rolls around, the man has gone clinically insane and is, off his rocker and is, doing lots of questionable things. But I really liked him. I thought he was a really charismatic bad guy. The speech at the beginning of BioShock with the "What is a man entitled to the sweat on his brow?"
said it belonged to God.
It belongs to God. It's fantastic, and it really sets the scene of that whole game. He's only in it for the first half.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Only in it for the first half, and then you find out the real villain, which is again another fantastic twist in that game that has not been replicated since. Sorry.
So jokes aside, I'm going to write on here for our little thing, because you're talking about helping people gather stuff. Pause, will you, just for 2 seconds. Twisty. This will remind us later. What you liked there, you said it was twisty because it was a twist at the end.
Yeah.
So. For when we build our characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Twisty. Okay.
So, I mean, you could take Ramsay Bolton as the fear as a weapon. 100% is what I think is his defining quality. A lot of his scenes of Ramsay Bolton was I think there's a bit, as I said, it's been a long time since I've seen it, and I only watched the series through once, but I think there's a scene where he sets his dogs on someone, but gives them just out of range, so they're getting closer and snarling, and the guy's cacking himself in the cell or whatever, and then he just unleashes them on him. And things like that, but not until he's given him what he wants or whatever. It's that sort of, quite nice thing. Third on my list of 5, I would say Emperor Palpatine.
Okay.
As Star Wars is one of my favourite franchises of all time.
I'm going to ask you this again. When Toby was here as a guest, I asked you how many Star Wars films.
There 6.
He lies to you. Don't trust him. He's villainous.
That's what a Palpatine would do.
Yeah. He lies to us.
The attack on my life has left me scarred. Yeah, either way. He's fantastic. The manipulation from word 1, the fact that you'd sin if you watch him in the order it's intended, where you watch 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. You know who he is immediately from the start of episode 1. As soon as you see Ian McDiarmid, you're like, oh my goodness, that's the Emperor sort of thing. And then it progressively gets worse. I really like how they did. Yeah, I really liked how they did that. I thought the Master Manipulator and what he did to Anakin Skywalker to make him Darth Vader and things is masterful manipulation at a high end level and things. And yes, he was evil for the sort of the power grab, which is what a lot of these guys kind of want to, other than Andrew Ryan wanted power. He wanted to run his own system, hence made Rapture. Ramsay Bolton wanted to be the head of House Bolton and then King in the North, so hence power. And it's the driving force for a lot of these guys, but Palpatine did it to a whole new level. He conquered the entire galaxy. So I like Palpatine. 4 and 5. It gets a little bit trickier here because it's sort of not an immediate jump off point where I can sort of pull them out of the ether. But Pennywise the Dancing Clown, maybe.
Okay.
The Tim Curry version over the Peter Skarsgård version. That sort of taking something. Well, no, let's not do Pennywise because it's a question. We get into the whole thing. He's not a clown. He's like a giant spider or whatever, isn't he? He's like an alien, cosmic being sort of thing. But uses the clown as a form to scare people. Blah 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 blah. No, I'm going to go with Jack Torrance from The Shining.
Okay.
Yeah. Jack Torrance from The Shining. I mean, arguably, and we talked about this when we were setting this up, he's not the villain of the movie The Shining or the book The Shining. The Overlook Hotel itself is the villain of that story because of what it does to Jack Torrance. But he's like the manifestation of that, isn't he? And yeah,
the latest manifestation, because the previous
it's Creedy, wasn't it, or McCready or whatever before,
when the twins were not well looked after before him.
Exactly. But yeah, that story is taking something that's like supposed to love and protect and look after you and twisting on its head and making it the villain and stuff. Is very clever, and it's a fantastic movie. Shelley Duvall paid for it quite dearly when she was filming it with Kubrick, which we've had a conversation about.
He didn't like. She passed away recently, didn't she?
She did, very recently. Last week?
Yeah, something like that.
As a time of recording?
She was, he pushed her to snapping point and take off.
She never acted again after The Shining with Kubrick.
Never acted again at all?
I don't think so. And she was quite a prolific actress in the 70s.
Yeah. No, she didn't have fun.
No. But yeah, Jack Torrance, fantastic character. Jack Nicholson's an amazing actor, and doing that sort of twisting the whole protectorate father figure into the murderer was very clever. And again, that's not a power grab. That's a twist on something that was already there. But I think what makes a good villain is in that respect is it's the person you least expect, or it's the person you would hope it would never be because it is the person who's supposed to look after you and keep you safe, and turning against you through no force of their own, sort of no will of their own. But then it's arguable at the end of it, does he just kind of give in? Because there's the whole scene where he's talking to the ghost of Creedy in the bathroom, and he's like, well, you've always been the caretaker. I think that's the point where it's kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe I am. Because before then he's like, no, you did it. You killed your family. You butchered them up. I've never done that. And he was like, no, you have done that. That was you. You've
always been here, sir.
Yeah. And
yes, you've got to correct them. And he rolls his R's very well. Yes. No, he was, by the end when he snapped, and it was like, Wendy, darling.
Kind of bash your brains in.
Yeah. I always, for years, on Facebook you can change your Facebook profile picture for 24 hours or whatever you want to do. And I always on Father's Day swap it to Jack Torrance, just sit there with his kid in bed, just because I'm a sick bastard.
I would never hurt you. The last villain was sticking with the Kubrick theme, because Kubrick wrote really good bad guys, is Alex Delage. He's my last one.
Okay.
Alex Delage from Clockwork Orange. Real psychotic, nasty bit of work. Who arguably was at the beginning just doing it for the fun of doing it.
Yeah.
No consequences. And then the whole point of the movie, I think, is the punishment he received better or worse or fitting for the crimes he committed? And the way it sort of portrays it and stuff is, he was cured, but at what cost?
Yeah.
But it's a very clever film. It's quite a hard watch. If you've never seen A Clockwork Orange and you're thinking about it, it's a hard watch. There's some very, very upsetting scenes in that film.
It stayed an 18 in today's society for a reason.
Yeah, but it's a very clever story. And Alex Delage as a character is, Ian McDowell, isn't it? Malcolm McDowell? Yeah, who played him is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The way in that movie they did the language that the author, I forget the author's name, who wrote Clockwork Orange.
Kevin,
thank you. I can. No, I can't get it. I'm not going to grasp. But they wrote this whole language, or this sort of abbreviate, or sort of style of mix of Shakespearean English with modern day English and things to create this sort of strange vernacular and stuff. And the way they did that in the film was very clever. Where you
Anthony Burgess.
Thank you,
Kevin. You can rest your laurels.
Yeah, calm down, Kev. Anthony Burgess wrote that fantastic language, which they did really well, and it kind of added to it. And his love of classical music. I remember, I've always been into classical music because my mum made me listen to it when I was a kid, and I, desperate to me to try and learn an instrument and things when I was growing up. And I remember watching Clockwork Orange, not when I was young, but like as a sort of an older lad, and saying to my art teacher at sixth form, was like, I'm really into Beethoven at the moment. And she was like, it's not because of Clockwork Orange, is it? I hope it isn't. And I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't put that together.
Might have been, sorry, miss.
Yeah. But they're my top 5. 7?
Well, you went over 5.
Did I?
Yes, that's fine.
Did I go over 5? Forgive me, I haven't stolen anyone out of you, have I?
No, you haven't, that's fine.
Good, excellent. Shoes on your foot now, go for it.
Okay, in no particular order. Again, there's favourite villain. I'm going to start with one that when I struggled in the garden. This was more a fascination. So if you go, I know it's your go-to Christmas film. Most of us want to see Michael Caine defeated. You like to see Hannibal Lecter.
I love it.
It's kind of weird,
yeah.
But Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, not because he's obviously in Silence of the Lambs.
He isn't the villain.
He's not the villain, which is what's fascinating, because he isn't, because they're after Buffalo Bill. And although Buffalo Bill does, puts lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again, he's got the little doggy, and he's an absolute psycho. But he is the villain, whereas Hannibal is just who's helping them. But actually, everyone remembers Hannibal. You do remember Buffalo Bill. But Hannibal's the one that gets the sequels in the books and in the...
Hannibal's the figurehead character, isn't he? Absolutely.
And the manipulation of him. And I think looking at my bad guy list here, there's no explanation, or it's manipulation. So Hannibal Lecter is cool, and he's very just puppeteer from behind the scenes. And then when he does escape, spoilers, and he gets away with it, it's grim.
Yeah. But
he's very clever about how he does it.
And it's very unsettling, the final scene of the movie, where you're like, he's on the loose.
Yeah,
he's out there.
No, I'm having an old friend for dinner. It's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant film. Just to give listeners a bit of context, Christmas Eve tradition in the Bygrove White household is we will watch Muppets Christmas Carol followed by Silence of the Lambs every year.
And why not?
So that we know it's Christmas when Merry Christmas, Dr. Lecter. Wherever you are. I can't do Clarice, but it's a whole thing.
I think Jodie Foster would be proud.
Thanks, Jodie.
My next on the list, next is Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Fantastic character.
Again, in a similar vein to Ramsay Bolton.
Yep.
Being unkind because they can.
And using the system as a shield.
And having control. And wanting control and not wanting the joy. That film was joyful and heartbreaking and tragic. God, yeah. And the end, and I need to read the book, but the film, the end is both glorious and traumatic and exactly how it should have finished. And she was just an absolute...
She is top 10 villains of all time for a good reason. And you would think nurse of a psychiatric ward and of a hospital in the 70s, what's wrong with her? Watch the film or read the book or whatever if you haven't already. It's you're exactly on the money with that. It's hilarious in scenes, heartbreaking in others. Not a dry eye in the house at the end of it. It's fantastic.
What was it? You had obviously Christopher Lloyd is in it, Danny DeVito's in it, and produced it Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
And
Jack Nicholson,
obviously. But no, it was back as a Brad Dourif, Wormtongue.
Yes.
Very, very young.
Yes, of course it is. Is he Billy? Yeah.
The kid.
The Billy with the girlfriend who, Billy.
So, and if you, sidebar, when you finish listening to this episode, go back to YouTube and watch Jack Nicholson's Oscar or award-winning speech that he gave from that hospital with the crowd, because it's the best video you're going to see.
He won the Oscar for...
Yeah, and he took the acceptance speech with the cast in the hospital.
Brilliant.
And it was just all in characters, and it's just a glorious 2 minutes of your life.
I've never seen that. No, I've never seen that. That's really cool.
Go and see that.
My favourite scenes in that film is when they're playing poker with matchsticks, and Martini is eating the dice from Monopoly in the corner. Just, we need that.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, Nurse Ratched, Hannibal because he's very manipulative from the background, puppeteer. Nurse Ratched is a good villain to me because she's so manipulative and power grabbing and using the system, as you say, very much like Ramsay Bolton. Next in line is Annie Wilkes from Misery.
Chilling.
Because she is lovely and not, and lovely and not, and there's just it's disturbing.
It's the killing with kindness thing, isn't it? It's I'll love you to death sort of thing.
Just my most of, and I re-looked at my top 10 list of films, which I'll tell everyone one day. Most of them are horror films, and I've realised horror I like to be disturbed. I'm not worried about castle prod cinema, where it's quiet, bang, and you jump. It doesn't interest me. I like to be disturbed. Annie Wilkes is disturbing because it's, as you say, killing with love. Let me hobble your legs so you stay with me and finish your book.
Well, the scene in there where she does that, for those of you who haven't seen it, Misery is the title of the movie in book Stephen King, is that scene where she hobbles him. The very next thing she says to him is, "I love you, Paul." And she's just broken his ankles. It's like, oh my god, she's so
her rockers. Next in line for me, I'm not of two minds with this. I'm two minds because of the actor and his history. John Doe in Seven.
Yeah, we talked about him
because he doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't make sense. He's just doing it, and of course he's got his reasons. And the whole law of seven is the 7 deadly sins, and he's punishing people for their sins. But there's no logic to it. I mean, is there with a psychopath? But he's just nasty. And I like the disturbing nature of it. Again, it's something in my psyche.
Absolutely. Seven is a fantastic film. Gave birth to the Saw franchise for sure.
Even my wife has seen Seven.
Really? I bet she didn't enjoy it.
She went to have a stiff drink afterwards.
Yeah, okay. Kevin Spacey's performance in Seven was amazing. Kevin Spacey as a person is very questionable, but his acting in that film was very, very good.
That's another episode. Can you separate the art from the artist?
I've been watching a TikTok series recently, just a quick sidebar, but I've been watching a TikTok series recently of a lady who does is your favourite celebrity a piece of crap? And just goes into the history of well-known celebrities and is like, are they horrible or not? And she recently did Gary Glitter. That was interesting.
Well, yes, we know he's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know the extent of it, but it was awful. But,
start. If it's small, it's bad enough. I don't need to know the extent.
But Seven, amazing. Okay. Loved it. Brilliant. Go on. What was your last one?
I've got more than 7. I've got more than 5 too. I'm going to rattle through these. Same actor, Kaiser Soze.
Okay.
Another puppeteer.
Yeah.
Background in The Usual Suspects. Have you not seen The Usual Suspects, which I saw 20 years ago?
Yeah, I saw it about 15 years ago, so spotty memory on that. But
it's very manipulative, and when you find Kaiser Soze is for those of you who haven't seen, people being arrested, they're all being interviewed. There's a guy that's running the whole show called Kaiser Soze, and he's this mystery guy that everyone's heard of, but no one's ever seen, or no one ever knows who he really is. And when you finally find it out, very much the puppeteer thing again, from the background, like Lecter, just subtly holding things together. Switching completely, I'm like 2 more.
You keep going. You wax lyrical, my friend.
The next one was Leatherface, because he makes no sense.
Okay.
It's the ultimate, proper.
And are we talking about Leatherface, the character, or Ed Gein, the serial killer he's based on?
I'm going to...
Because Ed Gein is the...
Oh, no, absolutely, is who he's based on.
But he's also the basis for Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
He's also the basis for someone else who's in a movie.
I'm going to go for this answer.
Yep.
For Leatherface.
Yeah.
Because when I watched the film, I didn't know what I watched, as most people did the first time. And you kind of went... And it's because there's no logic. It just happened.
Nothing happens in that film.
No, nothing happens, but they all get killed.
That's it. That's the whole movie.
But he gets away with it, and they just leave him.
Yeah. And it doesn't wrap it up. There's no satisfying conclusion. He
just does it.
Horror at the end.
And then he just does it. And for those of you who haven't seen it in a while, Leatherface, unsurprisingly, wears faces. And he changes faces depending on what mood he's in. So he's got a mother mask which he wears, and a father mask, and it's just... and then my final real one, there's 2 tag-on questions, really.
We can do an honourable mentions section.
Honourable mentions. It's interesting because it's a bit of a psychological villain. Tyler Durden
from Fight Club. Okay.
Actually, it's Okay, big spoilers. If you've not seen Star Trek,
this is the whole thing of Fight Club. So
if you're not going to watch it, fast forward 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds to be safe.
We'll timestamp it.
But because Brad Pitt
is Edward Norton,
he's fighting himself.
Yeah. So arguably, is he the villain?
Well, part of him is.
Well, yeah.
Because it's him to represent. It's how Ed Norton.
Is it like a multiple personality disorder or something like that? I forget. Is it or is it? Because it's never actually like pointed out until the end, is it? That he is.
Then when Brad Pitt goes missing.
Yeah.
And then he cottons on.
And then he realises that he's been doing this the whole time.
And he's been shagging Marla and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway. Honourable mention.
No, brilliant.
And there's the psyche, the idea that actually it's the same person's psyche that's the problem.
Honourable mention, just for the sort of charisma and character of this bloke, is Bricktop in Snatch.
Okay.
Just, do you know what Nemesis means? Just a really iconic, quotable character. Nothing really special about him, villainous-wise. You know, he's a gangland mobster from London, but like he's, you know, what a fantastic character.
Love it.
No thanks, Turkish. I'm sweet enough. Just brilliant character.
And two more honourable mentions. One, which will tie into the answers we've had. One with Roy Batty from Blade Runner.
Okay.
Because my question then is. He's doing what he's doing because he wants to live longer.
Rutger Hauer?
Yeah.
Right, okay,
so
cool.
Is he being... They're all doing it.
But then we spoke about this, didn't we? And it was sort of saying that are the synths or replicants in Blade Runner actually evil, or is it just they're coming to the end of their programming and they've gone a bit mental and have become self-aware?
It's not even they're being mental. They want to live longer.
Yeah, they don't want to die.
Self-preservation.
Yeah.
And the only way they're asking for help when no one's giving it, and then they're getting angry because they're human. More human than human, they're becoming emotional. But actually, he's the bad guy that's got to be stopped for the picture.
Yeah.
But is he a bad guy?
And I think this is kind of what makes a villain special to a degree. I mean, there's many things that do it, but like, yeah, definitely that sort of relatable goal is something that, you know, really sort of sits with the audience and stuff. Yeah. Honourable mention for me, Dr. Doom from Fantastic Four.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just because?
Well, he's, again, it's one of those sort of, I mean, he's not relatable in the sense that he is a king and a scientist of his own country, and is basically looking out for the state of his country, seeing the Avengers and, you know, the American superheroes go off and do all this sort of destruction around the world doesn't sit right with him. And he wants to put a stop to that sort of stuff to bring glory and prosperity to Latveria, which in the comic book is described as a complete utopia. He's eliminated crime and homelessness, and the life expectancy is amazing. So people in his country love him. So he doesn't see himself as the villain. He sees the rest of the world as the opposing force, sort of thing. So I like Dr. Doom as a character. There's some great memes. Some fantastic memes. Have you seen the one with him in the conch shell?
No.
It's on like a 60s golden age comic, and I think it's Namor is like, "No, Doom, don't toot the horn." He's like, "You fool, Doom toots as he pleases." Like, he holds the conch up. Fantastic.
Final honourable mention before we get into listeners' responses. You taking on Ramsey and fear, and he was using fear as that was what he was into. And I remember that from Christopher Nolan's films, when he said, like, when they made the first Batman Begins, the entire concept was about fear. Yeah. Fear of the bats at the beginning, how he became Batman, the fact they had the Scarecrow, Cillian Murphy's take on the Scarecrow, the entire Scarecrow thing is about fear. And Nolan did it, and all of his films have got different themes.
Is this his theme for that film, you think? Fear?
It's fear. And then with the other one, which I thought was a great villain and subtle, because it's not a bad guy, is in Interstellar, the bad guy is time, because they haven't got enough, and it changes, and it's always against them, and it's stopping them, and they can't control it. So it's a science fact villain, not fiction, science fiction.
Yeah, time is a thing.
You went that far away, you'd be fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't. Also, you'll die, and you're not clever enough.
The end.
Unless, of course, you're a NASA or equivalent astronaut, and then you go have fun, tell us how it
enjoy. Any more honourable mentions?
No, because that's plenty. No. And otherwise, we're halfway beyond it's going to be an extended episode or a two-parters.
That's fine. Right, okay, well, if that's the case, let's get on to readers or listeners'
listeners' comments. So we
comments.
asked you guys to feedback similar to Adam and I have done, ones we might have missed, and what makes them good or bad for you. A bunch of you have found us on Facebook and on Instagram and on YouTube. So while we're in the advert section, do like, subscribe, comment, and all that stuff, because it makes a difference. So start with
we had this one off of Facebook in no particular order. I like villains like the Joker, Maleficent, Darth Vader, Hades, who I imagine would be the James Woods version from Hercules, which is a fantastic character anyway. He's brilliant, etc. I like a villain who has a cinematic backstory and the capacity to be good. I think it seems more human, more likely that they could be villainous compared to someone like Thanos, for example, who is just a villain because he can be.
Well, it's interesting because I'll hold on to Thanos for a minute for another reason. Actually, I'm following on from that, as someone has, Sharon said to us, a good villain is someone who utterly believes what they're doing is right. Because no villain thinks they're evil. No. At all.
Unless some of them do, and they lean into it.
And they don't care.
Ramsay Bolton, for example.
True. And in their mind, what they do is completely justifiable, even if it's cruel, vicious, unkind, and destructive. They're absolutely committed beyond reason for argument. And the reason I say about your comment was because the example they gave was Thanos. Because in his logic, we need to get rid of half the universe.
Yeah.
It's bad, tough, it needs to happen.
Yeah.
So he was absolutely fine, and he had reason to do it because then he could save the other half. But he had the consequences he was fine with. So it's an interesting viewpoint, two different viewpoints on the same character.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this is it. And I think redeeming qualities of a villain is also an important facet of creating one if you're going to, because having that redeeming element can be dangled like a piece of bait to your characters or to the cinematic audience or whatever it is. Nice. And then it can be either whipped away at the last minute or followed through for a satisfying conclusion either way, I think.
Spoilers, if you've not watched the MCU for the past 10 years, but with Thanos, dangling that scene where he's giving Zoe
Saldana, Gamora.
Gamora, thank you. He gives Gamora the knife and he adopts her.
Yeah.
And then, how many films later, he has a kill.
Yeah.
So it's dangling that I can be a nice father figure. I'll distract you with this knife while people are being killed behind your back. This is look over here, look over here, look over here, and then he's solid.
The same thing with Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He is Luke Skywalker could see that he could be redeemed and ended up succeeding in that, and
Interesting you mentioned Darth Vader because we had a comment here that said Darth Vader was their pick, and I said I was having a conversation on YouTube in this, and I said, what was it about him that you liked? Because all they put was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And she said, and I asked the follow-up question, and what did your take, as you watched the prequels, you were saying, the three films we don't mention, what did knowing his backstory change your perception of him? Mm-hmm. And her reply was, backstory was fine, but I say that it was good not to have all the details up front. Your first impression of the bad guy needs to be clear and simple. Strong image and contrast to the hero. Their obsession should be clear, even if you don't fully understand why, and then you can get clues to them as the time goes on. This would apply to other great icons too, like the Joker.
Yeah, Darth Vader's first scene in A New Hope, when he steps through the corridor after the stormtroopers blast all the rebels in the very beginning of the film, is absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
And then you go through the first original 3 films of Star Wars, especially for the first 2, considering how evil he is and how hell-bent he is on the destruction of the Rebel Alliance and the capturing of Luke Skywalker and things, and then for him to turn it around at the final moments and then throw Palpatine down the pit for his son is a real wow moment sort of thing. But then I find that when you get to the end of that movie and he takes the mask off and he says to Luke, let me look on you with my own eyes, it's too late to save me, sort of thing, and Luke gives him the funeral he deserves and all that sort of stuff. When you then go back and watch the prequel series, you just see just how tragic it is that he did those things that he didn't at the end of it. What I got from it is that he never wanted to do these things, but he was too far gone. After Palpatine tells him he killed Padme, he just kind of let himself go at that point.
Yeah.
And was like, right, well, I'll lean into it then. I've got no other choice.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with Star Wars is because I'm not a fan of the prequels or the
sequels.
But what's interesting is I would tie this into other movies, I don't know if I ever needed to know his backstory. I mean, who did? I mean, all power to you for creating it, but it was enough. There was enough mystery. I like the idea of thinking.
It was a satisfying arc either way, wasn't it?
And it was, but it's interesting because I was thinking about that. The other example of that popped to my mind was when Ridley Scott went back and told you who the aliens.
Yeah, what Prometheus?
Didn't need that.
Yeah, I didn't know. That wasn't
at all.
No,
and not even just because they weren't particularly good films, but because the mystery, the stuff I could make.
This ultimate organism had no need of an explanation, and we can't use them as a villain because they're not a villain because they're just doing what aliens would do. They're animals.
But with Vader, you could have made up the stories as a kid on your own.
It's a likewise thing with the Joker. So the Joker has, as far as I'm aware, and true real comic book big fans will probably come at me with a few pointers on this, but as far as I'm aware, and I've read a few bits and pieces over the years, he has no official origin story. It's never been done on page, I don't think. He's always just been, as long as there's been a Batman, there's been a Joker, because they're polar opposites to each other. One cannot exist without the other one, sort of thing.
I don't know myself enough. I know that the DC universe, like with the MC, with Marvel, it all ties in, overlaps. And with DC, you can do what you want and then reset and do what you want.
With the cinematic stuff, for sure.
No, with the graphic novels.
Yeah.
Because you have a run, like the recent run, the New 52 stuff, with the same era as the Court of Owls.
Yep.
When Joker goes and takes his face back.
Yep.
And stitches it back on.
Yep.
It's an origin of him when he was psycho and they thought he died.
And then the Killing Joke, I think, is another origin thing.
It's a classic one.
Isn't Year One, Batman Year One got his thing in it, so it gets retold quite a lot. And then cinematically, arguably, you could count the Joaquin Phoenix recent film as an origin story for that character.
They just released another 3-minute teaser.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I'm sold on that movie. I'm going to go and see it either way.
Yeah,
so.
But it was a teaser.
It's like I haven't watched any of the Deadpool Wolverine trailers because I'll watch it. I'm going. I don't know if I'll go to the cinema, but I'll watch that film when it comes out. You don't need to sell me on it.
Yeah, keep going.
So we've got a big old list from our buddy Kev.
Kev, this Barrett, he was very good to us and just rattled off. He
gave us a massive old list, so we'll go through them. Colonel Walter E. Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, which is Marlon Brando's character. I completely agree. Fantastic character. Yeah. Love that film. If you haven't seen it and you've got a spare afternoon, because it does take an afternoon, it's about a 4-hour long movie, it's fantastic. And again, arguably, is Colonel Kurtz a villain?
Yes.
Really?
Well, Kev says here, a villain who gets to know through audio and the results of his actions as the hero journeys closer towards him, and one the hero has to defeat in order to return to his own humanity. But yeah, I mean, in terms of he is fighting against the war and the system.
Yeah, so he goes AWOL, doesn't he? Yes. Runs off into the jungle. Basically is worshipped as a god by an indigenous tribe who've never seen anyone from the outside world before, because he comes in with a load of automatic weapons and stuff, and basically lives the high life. He's, but it's that war is hell madness thing, isn't it, that kind of drives him to do that in the first place. And then the story of Apocalypse Now is it Martin Sheen?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not Charlie Sheen, it's too young. Martin Sheen and pals going off to try and find him.
And a very, very young Lawrence Fishburne who lied.
That's right.
His age.
Yes, he was like 17 or something, wasn't he, when he did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hans Gruber is next.
I don't need to say why. He's the IQ, but then Kev goes on to say why. He's the IQ against John McClane's brute force and muscle. Again, a reflection of the hero. And
it comes back to that polar opposites thing, doesn't it? It's you can't have one without the other. But yeah, Hans Gruber's amazing. Alan Rickman's incredible. It was a real jump for my wife, who'd never seen Die Hard until a couple of years back, and we did it at Christmas. She grew up with Harry Potter. Seeing Snape as Severus Snape become Hans Gruber was quite a jar for her.
Wow.
Whereas I think for me, watching Harry Potter, knowing that that's Hans Gruber, was a bit of a jar. Yeah.
But yeah, fair.
We got Kurgan from Highlander. I've only seen Highlander once, and I was about 8 years old. It's the movie where we're chopping off heads, isn't it? There can only be
Spaniard.
one.
You have a Frenchman playing I can't remember. And a Scotsman playing a Spaniard.
Yeah.
The accents are glorious. Yeah. The action is...
It's very 80s as far as I remember.
It's fine. I mean, I've seen it once, twice. A dominating threat throughout the film, this is the bad guy, has the same goal as the hero and someone the hero has already faced and failed against. Kurgan has killed the main character's mentor. Spoilers. So there is an element of risk whenever he shows up. So you know there's a real threat there. I had a debate with Kevin about this, but not a debate. I replied to him. He's yet to respond. Al Swearingen from Deadwood, one of the best TV shows ever made.
Never watched Deadwood, and it's right on my street 'cause it's cowboys, isn't it?
Cowboys and hookers, right up the street.
Yeah, sounds great. Never watched it.
A despicable and opportunistic character who will do what it takes to get things done, but also sympathetic and someone you can understand their actions. And it's fascinating because he's vile, and he treats his prostitutes or whores, he refers to them, or other words, 4-letter words that we won't use on this podcast. And he treats them really badly, and he's a murderer, and he's blah 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 blah. But he's not even an anti-hero because there are good characters in the show, but he is the linchpin. And there's another bar owner, Sight Oliver, the rival bar owner, 2 brothels doing their own thing. And then there's the real bad guy from a practical point of view who comes in, but Al is just vile. Al's a real guy in real life.
There's a trend going on Reddit at the moment with a lot of like the TV shows, comic books, franchises that I follow on there and stuff, of filling in like a tick box of like who's the fan favourite, who's the one you love to hate. Would this fellow Al Swearingen become the one you love to hate, sort of thing, the one who was made to be hated? At
the end of the film. So what they did, this show was 3 seasons long. It became too expensive to make.
So they finished it with a movie, did they?
So they finished it with a movie. When I watched the movie, I was blubbing like a child.
Oh, really? Okay.
And yes. And it was because of Al that I was blubbing like a child. It's Ian McShane's Lovejoy.
Is that Ian McShane's character? Right, okay, because obviously I've seen screenshots, I've seen trailers for Deadwood and been like, that looks like something I'd like to watch, and then I never got around to it.
So Al Swearingen is...
Okay, so Ian McShane
existed. They all existed in real life.
Right, okay, interesting.
Your man, famous... I'm shooting a fake name here.
You are. What, Cowboy Man?
Yes.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I don't know.
Clancy Jane is in the show.
Right, okay.
And... the dude played in real life by David Carradine, which doesn't help. Kevin, thank you. There'll just be lots of Kevin references.
Right, let's move on. Omar Little from The Wire. I never watched all of The Wire. I watched the first couple episodes of it, and this is the face that everyone makes at me.
Every season, the first 3 episodes were a drag. Not because they were rubbish, but they were slow as fuck. And then by episode 3 or 4, or every season, it picked up, and obviously each season went to a different place. So the first season was the gangsters, second season was the docks, third season was something, fourth season was newspapers, fifth season was schools or something.
Right.
So, but the same cops investigating different things.
Clever. Okay.
It took 3 episodes to build,
to establish that world.
Even though the characters in season 2 were the same characters.
Yeah.
It took 3 episodes to show where are they now. But it was glorious, and Omar threw it out.
One of the things I do know about The Wire is that it was the show that gave birth to the big budget television sort of masterpieces that came out. It was the first one, wasn't it?
So I think
if you didn't have The Wire, you wouldn't have things like Breaking Bad, you wouldn't have Game of Thrones, you wouldn't have these huge shows that propel people's careers into the stratosphere and stuff, and have got multi-million-pound budgets and stuff.
It was the reason that Idris Elba's career took off, because he was
he was in it, wasn't he? Yeah.
And no one believed he was English, which is hysterical. But and Omar is tragic. So Kevin's written here, he's a bad man for sure, but there is so much character and heart in him, and you could just say he was the anti-hero. He is, as I move my screen, he is lawless compared to the cops, but is formidable to anyone who dares to cross him. His name alone is enough to instill fear around him, and that's true actually, when people were worried about Omar. Because physically he's not a big guy.
Mm-hmm. I know the actor who plays him.
Physically it was never a big guy. In presence he was big. Physically he could, he and his shotgun were bad news. We've got Little Bill Daggett from Unforgiven.
Never seen Unforgiven.
I have forgotten. I've seen it a couple of times. Hides his brutality behind lawmaking, makes him feel unrelenting, is dangerous as Bill Manny but without the honour. So basically it's the old Annie Wilkes full user system.
Yeah, they're using the shield, the Nurse Ratched using the shield to rules to get what you want.
Clarence Bodiger from RoboCop, who's a glorious bad guy. I watched it recently and literally is the antithesis of RoboCop, which is why it works, because RoboCop is by the book and this dude isn't. And it's a mirror of the hero, proper mirror, like Batman's Joker, Clarence to RoboCop. Gaming one for you, GLaDOS.
GLaDOS, yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. GLaDOS is a fantastic character, and I think is made all the better by Stephen Merchant's portrayal as the training simulator that moves alongside with you at the same time. For a game with no human characters in it, arguably you are a human character, I think, in number 1. It's got so much heart. It's a fantastic video game. If you've never played it, it's definitely like up there. And you don't have to be good at video games to play it. It's not one of those high-paced shooters or anything. It's a puzzle game, and it's fantastic. And GLaDOS is sort of starts off being really supportive and really sort of like, yeah, you're doing great, and then it gets progressively more sinister as time goes on, and it ends with like a big thing with her. But yeah, it's very clever.
Manipulative, unemotional control freak who tortures the main character quite literally. Her emotionless makes her terrifying, and taunts her test subjects with cake, like rats in a cage. It's very true. Opposite the main character with their humanity, and it's very. These are all great traits for a villain. And Kev's final one was, because he gave a long list. Julia from Hellraiser's stepmother goes beyond. If you not watched Hellraiser, I didn't know what I was watching when I watched it. It was funny, and I thought it made sense. It was very 70s.
It's on our list of like cheesy 80 horror films to sit down and watch me instead.
It's a British author.
Yeah.
British film. Much I went in thinking I have no clue, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. Okay. But
and there's been a few of them as well, isn't there? Like 6 or 7 of them or something.
Apparently, don't watch the recent Netflix, whichever.
Oh yeah, that's the way of a lot of things, though, isn't it?
So the stepmother was worse than the Cannibalites. For context, is what Kev reckons. So a bunch there. And
don't forget, we had a special mention of Deacon from Waterworld.
Oh yeah, because we would like to be sponsored by Waterworld, or maybe.
Is that a thing? Is that even a thing?
It is now.
Okay.
We can't have.
We get Kevin Costner on as a guest.
He can't afford us because he just spent all his money on that Western that made no money.
Oh, okay.
And
sorry,
he
Kevin.
Yellowstone, so
okay.
He can't. Deacon from Waterworld, because who doesn't like?
Who doesn't love Waterworld?
And who doesn't like? This is thinking.
These finger fingers, yeah.
Which no one can see.
No one can see him.
I'll take an Instagram.
Dennis Hopper.
There you
go.
Also, Pop Quiz Hop Shot from Speed. He's a great bad guy.
Yeah, he's also King Cooper in the really bad live-action Mario and Luigi Super Mario Brothers film.
Fucking bad guy. But what was interesting?
But Mad Max, wasn't he in Mad Max?
No.
Was he not? Oh, he was Waterworld, which was the equivalent of Mad Max but on water.
Yeah, the film we just.
The film we just talked about.
Oh god! So what's interesting about that list, and we've rattled through them, but there are links there. So there's what we've seen is there the psychological, the absolute psychopath don't have a clue, or just in it for their own gain at the expense of everybody else. Is the summary kind of there, and opportunistic and powerful and all this kind of stuff, and just holding power over people, which is interesting, and makes them again. Lots of different people said the mirror to the hero, the opposite to the hero, the crash, the opposing. No, I'm going to forget these quotes one day. Immovable object, unstoppable force, hitting each other. Nothing's ever going to change. That was the classic Batman and Joker thing.
Absolutely.
I'm always going to be here, and you're always.
Well, one of them can't exist without the other. I remember there's a scene in one of the comic books where the Joker has the ability to kill Bruce Wayne. Like he turns up at the Wayne Manor and
spoilers.
And I think he's got like a gun to Bruce Wayne's head, but he doesn't see him as Batman until he puts the suit on.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't know who this man is. Do you know what I mean? I've got no interest in this person at all. He had all the things were in place where he could just end it and get what he needed and get his life's work done and things like that and go on with his life of crime, but he couldn't because it's kind of like, well, if you don't exist, I don't exist.
And without you, I have no purpose.
Yeah.
Which I
think is very clever. A couple other characters I just want to chuck in there as we're putting in the big super characters. The Kingpin from Marvel stuff.
Yes, sorry, catching up.
So Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal in the Daredevil series was fantastic.
Hope is good in the new Daredevil.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't in Hawkeye. And
no, they kind of shoehorned him in right at the end, didn't they? But yeah, the scene when he is embarrassed in the restaurant by one of his cronies and then slams the man's head in the car door until he dies is brutal, and it kind of just gives you an idea of how sort of very veneer and shiny, and a velvet glove on the top, but there's that iron fist underneath, which I think is a very good quality.
The other thing I love about that scene, because it's gross, is the fact that his sidekick, so he takes a phone call and he says, yes, it's this door you need to open to get him. Drags him out. He starts slamming the door into the house.
Embarrassed me in front of Vanessa.
The sidekick is just sat in the car while it shakes. And you just see him, and the car's being shaken, so then he gets out. But the entire, that scene where you just stare at the dude and he's just shaking and you don't see anything. No. You do eventually see stuff.
You hear it.
You hear it. But the fact he just sits there and it's just the suspension's going on this ridiculously oversized car is brutal enough without you, because you just know what's squelch. And
it shows that ruthlessness and that sort of calculating, like, this man is a killer. He is more than capable of doing the things that he wants to do.
You find out his backstory and why he is that brutal or anything.
Yeah, fantastic character.
Yeah,
really good villain.
And what's the other really good thing about that, which is fascinating from a filmmaking perspective, cameras. The dude isn't that big.
No.
Obviously,
Vincent D'Onofrio is not a massive guy.
No, you look at him stuff. He turned up in the latest, the first of the new Jurassic Park films with Chris Pratt, and then the same height. He was in the new Magnificent Seven, terrible film. Don't watch it. But he's normal. But because they put
perspective, it's like how they did Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, wasn't it? Made him look massive compared to Ian Holm.
But he just looks wide and bulky, and his head looks.
Well, he's supposed to be huge, and one of the other things I like about him as a character is that he is kind of like Batman in this world of superheroes. He's just a bloke. He's got no special abilities. He's not,
He just waits for a while.
Yeah, he's just a huge man.
Slight sidebar, for anyone who cares, Daredevil is my favourite superhero ever.
He's my second.
Who's your first?
Spider-Man. Grew up with Spider-Man. He was the first superhero I saw on a Saturday morning cartoon and was like, this is amazing. I absolutely love this. But Daredevil was a very close second because of the fact, he is just a bloke. Yeah, you can argue there were echo sense and all that sort of stuff, but I really like the duality of like being a deep Catholic with being a lawyer and also like quite a bad womanizer and also a martial artist. It's kind of like, wow, you've got it all going on there, Mr. Matt
Catholic
Murdock.
Guilt. Yeah. Catholic, nothing like a bit of Catholic guilt.
Fantastic character. And if you've never got a chance to go and see it or see it at all, don't watch the Ben Affleck film, it's terrible. But do watch the Netflix series with Charlie Cox playing him because he's fantastic. And the whole series.
Now find on Disney Plus because they've taken it back.
Good. But it was so good.
It's very good. I've binged it so many times and it just gets the tone correct for all the characters.
Yeah.
And they finally had common sense for the new stuff they're doing. They finally talked to Deborah Ann Woll's playing Karen Page and she's now back in it. And Eldon, I forget his surname, he's playing Foggy and he's
Foggy Nelson.
So they've got, because there was part of it.
Be John Berthenhold back as the Punisher then. Yeah, love it.
They got them all back because they realised it would be a good idea.
Rosario Dawson as Night Nurse?
I don't know. She's the one I haven't heard about.
And I'm not sure about the actress's name of the lady who played Electra, because she was very cool.
Yeah, she was. And again, they're the ones I don't know about, because Electra, spoilers, died. No.
But she gets resurrected.
Of course she does. Spoilers.
Yeah. Either way, yeah. So, there are villainous choices. Have you got villainous choices? Was there one that you're screaming out for that we haven't mentioned? Chuck it in a comment. Send it over.
Yeah,
for sure.
If you've had any more when you find this on. Send in more. Find us on Facebook. We are on Facebook at Swords, Balls and Beards. We are on Instagram at Swords, Balls and Beards.
There's a theme here.
There is a theme here. It's rambling. Find us on the YouTube. We do check them out. Hence how we got all this stuff.
And it's an interesting conversation because that was the thing that I took away from our prep for this episode, was that when I went back and spoke to my wife about it, and we ended up sitting down and discussing what makes a character a villain, because you can have people who are doing stuff out of opportunism or doing it because their hand is forced and things and they're objectively bad decisions, but do these make them a villain, or is it someone like, or is it your cartoon classic bad guy like Skeletor, or Evil Lyn from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or whatever. So there's that. But then using the information we've got from this list of characters we've created, how would you create a tabletop RPG BBEG using those sort of things? What would you do to do that?
Well, when I've done it in the past, I have the two obvious examples I wrote down of how I've done it. I misread the question originally about how you, so I was thinking about RPG villains. And when I ran 2 campaigns back to back with the same players, and there was Dragon Heist, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And Waterdeep Dragon Heist, it's a crime thing, and you run it 4 seasons, and they give you the bad guy. And depending on the season, you've got all these different bad guys, because it's like they treat it like Gotham City with their version.
Their rogues gallery.
Yeah, and depending on which season you pick, when you prep it as a DM, you get this bad guy. This is your main bad guy. You're going to meet the others, and this is your main one.
Gives you replayability.
Yeah, and it was really clever. So when I played it, it was the first one I'd ever run. I tried it, and I stuck to it, and I was kind of whatever I did. And then by the second book, no, in fact, it was the first book. What I found more interesting was building my own.
Good.
And I built my own, and I built them, and they were glorious. They were the half-sack twins, and there were 2 children who were, this will become relevant in a minute, there were 2 children who were rogues, literally by class, because I physically built their characters.
You built the stats for them, yeah.
And they were working, it seemed small fry working for the big fish, in principle, whoever the big fish was, and that's what they said. And what was great about those villains is I designed them, and they were children, maybe 11 or 12, and they were little shits, and they were called half sack because they were so small they could only carry half a sack of food, and that was their colour.
Okay.
And they went around doing what's this and that and the other, and they ended up trapping my crew, my players, and they ended up in a big fight. And they were highly skilled because they've been doing this since they were bubbies, so they were already, from a mechanical point of view, higher than my lot. Mm-hmm. And eventually my lot got so sick of them, and they were convinced. What was interesting, and this is where I tried to subvert expectations. So they dealt with, we got away from one of the twins in this fight, which is in this theatre, and they were running backstage chasing this other little kid, thinking I'm going to get that little shit. And 2 of my players rugby tackled him to the ground and then cut his head off.
Wow, drastic. A child.
Yeah, and it both broke some of my players,
yeah,
which I had to have character words with people afterwards because they were not happy, because I didn't know they were going to kill the kid. But what was interesting was they were convinced it wasn't a child, because they thought it was
like a shapeshifter
or a magical something. And
yeah.
I put hints in, no, it's a kid, but because I thought I was just being deadpan.
Yeah.
But that I subverted their expectations, because they were OP as fuck. Mm-hmm. I mean, not in a bad way, but they were deliberately
No, they're supposed to be a threat.
And it was more interesting to have these than the ones that were written in the book. Anyway, so I subverted them, and I made it so all of a sudden you had one of these kids that I didn't know they were going to kill him. And one of them had already, in that fight, taken down one of mine to the point of rolling death saves. Mm-hmm. So they're all of it. So subversing it, and then they all buggered off, and they got out of it, and players got past the genuine shock of what happened, from both the fact they killed this kid, but they had killed this kid, and then they had to deal with the consequences. And then we progressed through the campaign, and the remaining twin showed up every now and then as a hint.
Right.
And we played that campaign for 18 months.
Okay.
And we did the rest of the campaign, and I threw him in after that once or twice more, and that was it in 18 months. And then left it.
Never popped back up?
Second book.
Yeah, there it is.
What I did, and I love subverting it, is they were never mentioned again. In the first book, I'd hinted they were working for the big bad.
And you create these characters? Yeah. These weren't pre-written. No, you created these ones.
And they were going to, in my world, if we ever did the Dungeon of the Mad Mage,
yeah,
which was an option,
the follow-on sort of book.
Follow-on book, and I didn't know we were going to. I said, well, they'll be working for him then.
Yeah.
And my players said, absolutely, we've got these characters to level 10, whatever it was.
It makes sense to keep going, yeah.
We got to know them. So then we progressed with them, and then as the campaign, they didn't see them for the whole campaign. But the remaining brother had held a grudge for the whole rest of this new campaign.
Fantastic.
And at the end, the coda, the after credit scene, and all I had to do was describe this little kid sitting on. Every time they'd seen this kid, very much like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11, he's always eating.
Yeah.
Or Tony Stark in any Marvel film.
Yeah.
And he was sat on a barrel where he couldn't reach the floor because he was too eating an apple. And that's all he ever did. And I just described this kid in black eating an apple, and my players shit a brick. Because they knew it's that kid. And I ended up with the, how do you want to do this? Because he was coming for revenge.
Love it.
We left it on a cliffhanger. So Short answer, very long story to a short answer, is subverting expectation.
Brilliant.
And taking something. Another thing I did with the villain was when we played Mad Mage. Mad Mage was dull.
Yeah.
In my head, the Mad Mage as a character was dull, and I also, having taken my players through 18 months of using those characters, when they said they wanted to do the Mad Mage afterwards, if you look at the Mad Mage book, it says to you, here's a bunch of quests, a reason to go in the mountain. That's dull as fuck. It was just another random quest.
Sure.
What I wanted to do was give my players real reason to go in. So I took one of the players' backstories, she was a drow that was excommunicated from her mother, and made her mother the real villain of the whole
Clever
thing, and wrote it so it means that you've got emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
You've got all the shit that you can build from the backstory. Mm-hmm. You've got the characters can ham that up, or the player can delve as deep into whatever they want to offer.
Yeah, sure.
And then it meant that the other players, they wanted to help their friend, not just go and get some random gold. And when it came,
your stakes in it are immediately
and the
pushed
closer
up.
they got to where they thought they were going to meet mum.
All I'd suggest for listeners who may want to do something like that as well is check with your player beforehand.
I had a conversation.
100%.
What I ended up doing is we had their backstories, and this player happened to be my wife. So we live in the same house. So she'd written this backstory, and I said to all my players, "Can I use your backstories as I see fit?" So I did. I pulled them through. So some were side quests and some were this. And for Sharon's, my wife's, she'd written this elaborate backstory about her mother, and I thought, there's your villain. So basically, a friend of theirs had been kidnapped by her mother, which was luring her into the dungeon, and mum sent her a note saying, "It'd be lovely to see you." It's a bit more formal than that.
Yeah.
And I gave,
but then that's the ice pick in, isn't it?
And I sent Sharon the note electronically with the family seal on it, and she got it in the post. Request at the local bar. All these quests are coming in from people who know your heroes, and one came from mum, and she recognised the family crest.
Clever.
And my wife didn't know this was going to happen.
Okay.
And I made her read it to the players on screen. I asked her to just read it out. She'd never seen it before. I said, this is the letter that stands out to you. She could have clearly ignored the letter, recognised the family crest and thrown it in the bin, and I'd have cried because there'd be no plot. But tying
that letter would have arrived to a different player under a different name.
Tying it to your player characters. And having that emotional.
Well, so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, "Oh, I need to write a villain or whatever," by doing it that way that Adam's just described it, it's really clever because basically your player writes them for you.
Yeah, it's
half the job. You put a face on it, and you give them the abilities, and you create the character as you would create any other. You can pull from an existing character. I'm sure the Mad Mage, because I've never read the book, has got a stat block.
Oh yeah, he's there.
There you go.
They did see him.
It's a name swap then at that point, isn't it?
He was in the last battle. I mean, before that, I chose to keep him because I ended up going through this book and homebrewing the shit out of it.
Yeah.
He was in the last big battle. He was the BBEG, as it were. And he did have a stat block, and he was OP, and he was ridiculous, and he was silly, and he was just a bit high camp. It was like Gandalf gone wrong.
Yep.
And he was just a bit okay. But it didn't interest me.
But there's no. So the other way you can do that is if you've got a character and you're worried about that sort of thing, like how's there going to be a buy-in. What you can do is you can have them pop up right at the beginning of a campaign when you're level 1, do something horrific to a nearby NPC or something like that, or a town or whatever. The players have got no way to stop it. And then they disappear, and then that's kind of portrayed them as your villain, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's quite a clever way of doing it. I had one scene that I said, because I don't know if you remember, we were talking about when we were doing our, how do you do world building and stuff. The way I do it is I pick like nice little moments of role play, and then I build around that.
Yeah.
So this one game I was running, I had a vision of a town of sort of like native people, based in sort of old Sengoku era Japan, and the Western, basically the similar thing with that the Portuguese arrived in Nagasaki in Japan, and there's that walking through with all this magic and all this gunpowder and stuff, and being like, "Rejoice, for we have saved you," as their towns are burning around them and stuff, giving the players an immediate I hate these people, sort of thing, and we want to be on the side of the the oppressed masses and stuff. But that was the sort of thing that I pulled from it. I've never created a villain from scratch. I've never built one before, so I think using this conversation of picking your top 5s and things like that as a DM it's probably a good thing to sort of list your top 5 and then pick a trait or an aspect of that character and then try and squidge it into something that you're building. It'll give you like a jumping off point. You can then embellish that how you want it.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be a really good tool for players and DMs who want to create those sort of characters. Even if you as a player are writing a backstory and it's like, yeah, my evil brother or whatever, why is your brother evil? If the DM asks you, you've now got the sort of, right, well, okay, well, I really like the manipulativeness of Voldemort and I really like the charismaticness of James Woods Hades. You know, you can sort of pull that together, and even just describing those characters to your DM gives them a bit more of a picture.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite a clever way to do it. I have embellished existing characters from modules.
Okay.
A couple of these I like. One that my players like so much, they brought me a T-shirt when it printed with the quote that I put on it from the villain, and it was just a generic pirate captain from the first quest in Ghost of Saltmarsh called Sanballat, and there was a bit in the combat where one of the players did like 1 point of damage to him with like an arrow or something, and I had them role played as like touched his cheek and was bleeding. He was like, Sanballat does not bleed. Which immediately gave that character life. I then got given a T-shirt with Sanballat does not bleed, and then on the back it says until he did, because they killed him. But things like that. But then we also had like a character that my players naturally gripped onto. So there was a magic item seller in Ghost of Saltmarsh who casts Detect Thoughts on every magical piece of equipment she sells. That's not inherently evil, that's not inherently nasty, she's just looking out for her own interests. But when this party discovered that they'd been having their thoughts read since day one, they were very unhappy, and then that was like, okay, cool, well, let's make her a bit more of a villain then.
Nice.
And she... Because
if they hadn't have discovered... You'd have taken it. It was because they found that out. They didn't bother figuring that out, or they hadn't.
They cast Detect Magic on an item and realised there was a second enchantment on it, and then was like, oh, what? And then the beans spilt. That ended with our hell race through Avernus when she transported them into hell.
Nice.
As a sort of, well, if you're not going to give me what I want, here's the options: you either die, or I'll get you. Or she was like, give me what I want, I'll get you out of the situation you're currently in. She basically ambushed them with like a dreadnought on the high seas where they had no hope of like escape. This thing was going to blow their ship out of the water and drown them all. It had like stats at the wazoo. It was amazingly powerful, and she was the captain of this ship at this point. You know, investments, darling.
Amazing.
And said, look, you can give me what I want and I'll get you out of the situation. To which they sort of had a quick group huddle on the deck of this burning pirate ship, and were like, yeah, all right, you can have it. And she went, okay, great. Clicked her fingers, opened up a portal, they fell into Avernus. Got you out of the situation, didn't they? It's up to you to get back now. So yeah, and then they went on a death race, which was a load of fun. But yeah, those are very brief characters. Like the description for Sanballat is literally a generic pirate captain stat block, but as soon as you put a little accent on it and a little bit of a flavour into it, then it becomes a whole thing, becomes a living character at that point. And the magical item seller, I've forgotten her name from the book. It's been a little while since we played it. She is written in the book, but she's got like a very short paragraph that this is her rates for selling stuff. She will give you quests to find. So she's after this particular item, and she casts Detect Thoughts on everything she sells. That's basically it.
Kevin, if you can get bonus points, you can figure this one out.
Yeah, I mean, I can find it out in my book at home.
I want to see if he can do it.
Get Kev to do it. He can be our librarian.
Yeah, the other idea I had was there are consequences to stuff. So with Half-Sack, they didn't see him for an entire campaign.
Yeah,
he both leveled up because he would do in
of course he would.
And he did stuff like he wanted his vengeance.
Oh, he's his own interests, yeah.
So that always happens with another bad guy my crew came across in the second campaign they played together. They discovered a white dragon that was hiding as a transporter of goods. A
merchant?
There you go, thank you. I failed with words. And basically my idea was that the merchant's warehouse was the dragon's hoard. Just it was a merchant's warehouse.
Love that.
And they found out that she was a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And ran like out of the city and completely left it forever. And eventually they had to go back.
And the city had been burnt down by the dragon.
And it had.
Yeah, we did deal with it.
So they had to then deal with what basically there was already a dragon locally, and there became a turf war whose nest it was going to be.
Sure.
And they had to deal with the fact they had...
This village was caught in the crossfire.
The other interesting thought I had about villains, you talk about those two from the book. One of the things I came across with Mad Maids, they got bored of being in their dungeon, so I pulled them out of Baldur's Gate. and threw them at Xanathar, who's a very well-known D&D.
He very much is. He's on the front cover of Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
If you're going, behold, a big pointy eyes, looks like a
It looks like a meatball with like eye stalks.
Yeah,
basically.
It's kind of Mike from Monsters Inc. with more eyes.
Yeah, and floating.
But apart from that, it's very similar. But what I thought was interesting with any villain you come across,
I think every beholder from now on should have the voice of Billy Crystal.
The thing I thought, if you're wanting hints and tips about how to use an already very particularly embedded in lore character, it was fascinating. We talked a lot about the Joker.
Yeah, please mention the goldfish because I just thought it was a really funny joke.
He has a goldfish.
Put that thing back where it came from.
One of my crew's solution, wanted to get out of dealing with Xanathar was to steal his goldfish, like a American collegial prank. And
hence the song.
But what I thought was a fascinating concept. Depending on your table, if you think about what you want that villain to be like, there are versions of interpretations of different villains in pop culture. Joker, the classic one, right? We're going to pretend Jared Leto never did the Joker. I think he'd like to genuinely buzz you. You look at the Joker scale, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Cesar Romero from Batman '66.
Yeah.
The camp as you can be, all the way through to Barry Keoghan. I never pronounced his name right. From the Batman.
Yeah, who's the next version, isn't he?
And you've got obviously Joaquin Phoenix in the middle, Heath Ledger, Mark Hamill, Jack Nicholson. The scale there on what type. You've got the gangster in Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
You've got Mark Hamill who's just absolutely crazy and doing his thing. The world burns. Heath Ledger just sometimes. What's it? Michael Caine says some people just like to watch the world burn.
Yeah. I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one.
Yeah. The Joaquin Phoenix with his mental health struggles.
Yeah.
We've yet to see what the Batman's version of the Joker really does, if they do. But knowing your party, knowing what kind of character, I know my wife would not cope on a table with a very dark.
With a Ramsay Bolton dismembering people.
She didn't cope with the kid being killed.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. But you know your table. So at what point, and then if it's a silly game like I've just finished Witchlight Carnival, all Feywild and stupid, a Cesar Romero Camp Joker would work very well.
Oh, perfectly. But the Heath Ledger one wouldn't.
No, it would. So it's knowing the tone you're trying to go for, and then if you know pop culturally, what reference you're going for. Okay, well, what's that version? Because that helped my brain go, oh, I see. That's the version we're going for.
Yeah.
So if there's a scale of a character, lots of characters being played with different actors. It could be use Bond if you're a Bond fan, or it could be a use, as I said, the Joker. But that is another thing that could help you. And how your players see the character when you RP it, they might picture it in their mind's eye like something completely different, or a different Joker in that scale. Doesn't matter, as long as you're consistent with how you do it.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a good conversation.
It's a long episode.
It's been a good episode. It's again, I say this.
We're playing this on double speed.
I say this every week we do these, but it always feels like whenever we have these chats, we just scratch the surface of what's available for these conversations. You could go on for hours and hours and hours, but yeah. Right, last couple of things to round us off then. Hobbit Corner. Doing anything?
Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm waiting for Bilbo to stop playing in the background. There we go.
There it is. Yeah.
Interestingly, I just finished this weekend. It shouldn't have taken 3 years, but it did. My Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign.
Yes, you did.
It wasn't starting because Wild Beyond the Witchlight isn't a long campaign.
No, but you play for 2 hours a week.
We play short games every other week.
Yeah, so 2 hours every other week.
And I knew with this party very much. Talk about the scale. I wanted to play that when I released it. I knew the friends I was playing it with, I knew they'd love it.
Yeah.
But there was no release date.
Right, okay. So you pre-ordered it and all that, did you?
So for 6 months, we had to do something else.
Yeah.
Started. So I ended up starting with Candlekeep, building the characters up, Candlekeep Mysteries.
Yeah, one-shots, yeah, love it.
But keeping it consistent with the plot and the mystery and so on, and then doing it to, lifting it to a point where I could drift into Witchlight when it arrived.
Okay.
And we just finished... literally this weekend we had a 6-hour final go at Witchlight, which was glorious because we've been playing it so long. Two of those friends around that table have emigrating to Australia.
So you have a time limit to finish it.
The music you've been listening to on our podcast, Alex has written it for us, and he was in that game, and we had a great time doing that. So we're finishing that off.
Yeah. Picking
up in its place, or aside, is my other Hobbit Corner this week. I'm going to be running Blade Runner.
Ooh, exciting.
And interesting, off the back of doing last week's episode with my sister about playing
one-on-one, yeah.
It's 3 of us. So it's like a cop.
Nice.
We're going to run it as a cop and his partner.
Love it.
The game can be played with more than 2 players.
Of course you can.
But I'm going to do it as a cop and his partner solving a crime.
Brilliant.
I'm going to do it around the table, and if you ever go and get this game from Free League, if you buy the box, it comes in the box. It comes with lots of prop clues.
I love that. When games do that, fantastic.
And newspaper clippings, and you don't have to use them, but it's a different dice system again because they're going back apparently to, I forgot the game they used to run. It's a D12, a D10, a D8 and a D6. And you tell your skills. So, bear with me.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's basically your key skills.
Yep.
A, B, C, D. A being very good, D being the least good.
Yeah.
A is your D12, so on and so forth.
Oh, okay,
and
right.
so depending on what your match, you're always rolling 2 dice.
Yeah.
Because also, if it's strength, athletics, it's going to be your D whatever, and your D you roll them together.
I get you.
And you're trying to roll over 6 still. So if you're rolling
I see.
D6s, well, a D12 is a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, sure.
And they're your successes. So mechanically, it's really interesting.
That's cool.
So I'm pulling that together. What about yourself?
I have got a little bit more painting to do. I picked up a paintbrush again recently. I know, yeah, shocker. I've got 3 mech guns for my orc army and 4 boys to paint, and I've painted 1,000 points of orcs.
Steady now.
And then I've got a Gorkanaut and a load of other stuff to paint, and then I'll be ready for 2,000
And
points.
how's your campaign going?
It's going great. Absolutely loving it. We're having a great time.
Shout out to Battle City Games.
Shout out to Battle City Games. We've been playing now every week for, I think it's 8-9 games now I've had with them, and it's great. I look forward to it every week.
Are you bringing the WAR?
Absolutely, I'm bringing the WAR. But yeah, there's a bunch of people playing different things and stuff, and yeah, it's only growing. And the fellow who writes it, he's looking to do a thing where basically it can be ongoing forever.
And ever and
yeah.
ever.
So if you're a
it's back to being the Shining.
Yeah. So if you're a brand new player and you want to get involved with the weekly game, you don't have to go, well, I don't want to play a Crusade because everyone's upgraded all their characters to the nth degree and I'd be starting from square one. He's looking at creating a system where you get like bonuses if you go up against a player who's got all the XP. So you're still on a semi-even playing field, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Because inevitably, us who've been playing it since day one against someone who comes in a year's time, we're going to be stomping the new players because they come in with a fresh roster of people who've never played it before. So, it's fantastic. I love it. It's so much fun. Being able to have a weekly game. I was listening to Tabletop Tactics podcast earlier this week, and they were saying that the majority of people who listen to their podcast, and they've got a massive audience, will have like a whole army of Warhammer and play like 5 times a year because of like the logistics and getting it all around and getting people involved, and you might not live in a place with a local game store and things like that. I play every week. I mean, how lucky is that?
Yeah.
You know, it's
landed on our feet.
Yeah, really. So yeah, it's lovely. I'm really enjoying it. But that's my Hobbit Corner. I've got a bit more painting to do.
Nice. Never had too much painting.
Yeah, never. It's a good problem to have.
Very good. Well, thank you for rambling with me.
Likewise, it's lovely to be back.
Staying with us, everybody, for this extended episode. I hope you found it useful, helpful, interesting. Any questions about character building or anything you'd like us to
shoot us a message.
Shoot us a message. Find us on the socially places. Message us back. Let us know what you think. 2 weeks' time, we'll have episode 9, which will be titled...
We don't know yet. We haven't talked about it.
That's what's going to be told.
There we go.
Until then, keep yourself safe, and bye, Adam.
Bye-bye, Adam.
See you later.
Have a good one. Bye. Bye.